Welcome to the Word for 2022. Today we're finishing up the book of Nehemiah. We're in chapter 13. Before we get to the book, let me talk to you for just a moment about Ludwig van Beethoven. He had a life of both triumph and tragedy. At age 5, he was playing the violin. At age 13, he was a concert organist. During his life, he was a prolific composer. He composed 9 symphonies, 5 concertos, and countless other pieces of music. However, at the age of 20, he started losing his hearing. At age 40, he had almost gone completely deaf. Beethoven, however, never quit. It's been said that he was the most persistent man that ever lived. He dealt with difficulties and he worked out ways to solve them. When he was almost deaf, this is what he literally did. He cut the legs off of his piano and he laid on the floor. And then he banged out on the keys of the piano so he might feel the vibrations of the piano in the floor. And as he did that, he wrote his 9th symphony. Beethoven faced difficulty head on, and he was determined to do something about it. Nehemiah had that same determination. When he saw that something was wrong, he was determined to do something about it. That quality, it is greatly needed today. Under Nehemiah, the wall had been completed. Ezra and Nehemiah both led a revival, calling the people back to God and to His Word. After a while, though, Nehemiah returned back to the king of Babylon, back to King Artaxerxes. And while he was there, he continued to serve the king. But sometime later, he asked the king for permission to go back to Jerusalem. Upon returning back to Jerusalem, Nehemiah found a lot had gone wrong. Have you ever heard the phrase, when the cat's away, the mice will play? Well, that's exactly what was taking place in Jerusalem. When Nehemiah got there, he had to deal with 4 major problems. The first was that when he got there, he found that Tobiah had actually been able to take up residence in the temple complex. Now, you remember who Tobiah was. In the beginning, when Nehemiah got there, there were men, Sanballat, Tobiah, and others, that caused opposition. They were doing everything they could to stop the work, to intimidate the people. They made threats against them over and over. That was Sanballat, Tobiah, and others. But now, while Nehemiah was gone, the chief priest allowed Tobiah to actually live in the temple complex. But when Nehemiah found out about this, he went ballistic. He literally went in and threw everything that belonged to Tobiah out. And then he even had that room fumigated. Nehemiah knew that you could not mix good and evil. You can't straddle the fence. You need to make a stand and do what is right. And when you see something is wrong, you've got to do something about it. And Nehemiah gave the people the example. Does that happen today? Many Christians, unfortunately, are more concerned about pleasing others than they are about pleasing God. And as they do, they compromise their beliefs. They become wishy-washy in their convictions. Many times, you really can't see a difference in them as opposed to those that are in the world. The problem is, as the world's looking on, they see this kind of a person as hypocritical. And they even get to the point where they say, following Jesus, it makes no difference at all. Nehemiah, he needed to put a stop to that immediately. The second problem that Nehemiah dealt with was the fact that the people stopped tithing. He then called them together and he said, "Why have you neglected the house of God?" He rebuked them for stealing from God. The third problem was that there was buying and selling taking place on the Sabbath. Again, Nehemiah saw a problem and he dealt with it right away. Nehemiah literally locked the city gates so that there would be no buying or selling on the Sabbath. When again he saw a problem, he dealt with it immediately to fix it. The fourth problem was that the people were marrying foreigners again. You will remember that Nehemiah had to deal with this earlier, but now the people, they were doing it again. Nehemiah, again, he saw the problem and he needed to deal with it right away. What did he do? He rebuked them. He called curses down upon them and he even became violent with many of them. Once more, when Nehemiah saw a problem, he worked to fix it. There are major problems that we have today. As Christians, we need to deal with problems just like Nehemiah did, head on. We need to search for solutions, but we also need to deal with things decisively. Not being wishy-washy about our convictions, but we need to stand tall so everyone knows exactly where we stand, what is right and what is wrong. We need to commit to pleasing God and not others, and we need to follow God as Nehemiah did wholeheartedly. Nehemiah also knew that one day he would be judged for what he knew. Did he deal with things that were right and things that were wrong? As you read this chapter, again and again, Nehemiah prayed that the Lord would remember what he was doing. He knew that he would be held accountable. The truth is that we will as well. When we see something is wrong, if we do not say anything about it, we will be held accountable. Thank you for joining the Word for 2022.